friends, how are ya? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are sitting down and we're talking all things long distance relationships. The best, the worst, and everything in between. These are some of my thoughts. These are also some of my boyfriend's thoughts and a lot of y'all's thoughts as well. I went ahead, like I do pretty often. I asked on Instagram from your experience, if you've been through a long distance relationship in one form or another, what have been the best and the worst parts for you? And I think that there's a lot of group wisdom that really helps to put things into perspective, especially if you're considering getting into a long distance relationship or in a relationship and considering going long distance for a bit, or just already like pretty deep into one and just want to feel like, okay, other people out there get it and can relate and I'm not alone in this and I'm not crazy. Because that's always helpful as well. I will say, when I was writing all these things down, it kind of does almost feel like there's a lot more hardships than wins, but with a lot of things in life, going through the worst parts and the difficulties, I think does bring out so much goodness and a lot of wisdom really does come from it. So we're gonna go through the worst first and then we're gonna end in the best just to like end on a happier note. So without further ado, here's the worst and best parts of long distance dating or marriage or engagement or relationships in general. We're gonna start with one that I contributed to this list, and that is that when you're finally together, getting time alone is a little bit harder because you also wanna spend time with your friends, you wanna go on double dates, you might wanna see each other's family, etc., etc. So if you have 5 days together after being apart for so long, there's a few friends that you really wanna see with your partner and you accidentally fill your schedule and then it's really hard to get any one-on-one date time. At least that's in my experience. And that's just been something that we've really had to intentionally navigate. By the way, if you're new here, I've been in a long distance relationship only for about a year and a half. I still feel pretty new to this and I'm learning as I go. I know there's people that have done it for years and years and years. So that's something that I right now am in the midst of kind of trying to figure out. The next difficulty about a long distance relationship could on surface level seem like a great thing until you actually like dive into is this healthy or not, is it's very easy for it to turn into just like a highlight reel or an escape because you deal with your own hard life things by yourself and you so look forward to the escapism of seeing each other and you have like 3, 4, however many days so blissfully planned out that it is very much a highlight reel. Another thing that I have added to this list that has been hard that I finally feel like we just figured out in our relationship is it's really hard to learn how to rest together because time yet again is so limited. You want to just like go, fit it all in, try to fit in 4 different dates in one day because when are you going to see each other next? Sometimes it's unknown. But learning how to rest together is really important. It's really healthy. It's like a very essential skill to build as a couple to have like a balanced and healthy life once you do spend every single day together. And it took me pretty much going through like pretty intense surgery for us to like actually rest together for the first time over a year into our relationship. And I'm glad that we learned how to do that because now when I'm feeling fine, we've been incorporating that a little bit more as well. But that's something that took a pretty big external circumstance to learn how to do that. When you're long distance, it's a lot easier to, if we're going on the scary side of things, just lie about things. It's also just easier, intentionally or not, to conceal certain things. So like maybe your partner knows you're coming over and so we'll deep clean the house and you just kind of assume they're a clean person, but it's just, they might unknowingly be concealing the fact that day to day, they're a lot messier than you might believe because it's a lot easier to plan, oh, they're coming over next week, I have all week to clean. But also, if someone is a little less trustworthy and there are bigger issues, it just takes so much more trust to be in a long distance relationship because it is so much easier to conceal a lie. And that can mean a lot of different things. I have a lot of trauma in that area, so I'm not gonna super deep dive into that, but it can even just be like habits, like drinking or who knows, it doesn't always have to be another relationship, but there's just a lot more trust involved in a long distance relationship. There is a pro to this next point that we're gonna get to later, but A con, at least for me, is you don't necessarily get to be present as someone is building relationships, and it kind of creates more of like a my friends versus your friends as opposed to like an our friends, because it is just simply a little bit more difficult to be there for the phases of building intentional community or friendships or going on double dates. It's still totally possible. It's just time's more limited and it takes a lot more intentionality. So I feel like long distance relationships do create a little more mine versus yours in terms of relationships and a little less ours, which, like I said, there's some pros and there's some cons to that concept, but as you get more serious and as you get more rooted, that does to me start to feel like a little bit of a hard part. So I would guess the majority of the time in long distance relationships, person A is living here, person B is living here, somebody is going to move to where the other person lives. I know that there's some circumstances where person A and person B move to location C and start together fresh, which probably has its own pros and cons. But the thing that I can't help but think about while being in a long distance relationship is whoever moves for the other person, which the goal is eventually for that to hopefully happen someday when you're in a long distance relationship. You don't want to be long distance forever. You can't help but feel like the person moving is making more of the sacrifice, is having to start over, build new friendships, move their things, maybe leave their job, maybe leave their family. There's just a lot of sacrifice that comes with moving. And then in the reverse, I would almost rather be the person making the sacrifice, because I would really, really struggle with the guilt of knowing the other person sacrificed so much for me. So that's just kind of like a mental, emotional, like a hurdle that eventually if someone moves for the other person, both parties are gonna have to do a lot of internal work to get over those like feelings, because otherwise it could build like guilt or resentment from either party. If you're a person that really loves little acts of service, that is another thing that is really hard to do for the other person. It's totally possible, especially with today's technology, which we'll get into later, but like to schedule something from afar is like an act of service. But if you're the person that just likes like take your partner's dog on a walk or make them a latte in the morning, or the simple everyday joys of doing something small and kind for the other person, that's just a lot harder to do from afar. And speaking of love languages, you wanna know what my love language is? Touch. R.I.P. If your love language is touch, that has probably been the hardest part for me in long distance, is like in order to really feel connected to someone, I heavily rely on physical touch, whether that's even just like a handhold or a hug or something so simple and little. So it really forces you to go a long time without that and to find ways to connect outside of that. And it is hard work when that is like your primary thing. To me, touch is up here and all the other love languages are like here. Like it's like a big discrepancy. So some other people, some people get really touched out and don't like a lot of it. And if that's the case, then long distance, kind of a solution. Another worst part, and a lot of y'all said this on my Instagram, is just being forced to like miss some life events. You can't, especially if you're like flying distance from the other person, you can't just fly in for every single friend's birthday party, every friend's engagement party, every work event, everything like that. You can't. There's so many life events that happen that you just have to pick and choose, and you have to miss some. And deciding which ones are worth getting to and being there for, it's a big mental load. It's a big mental load, because ideally you'd be there for all of them, but that's just logistically impossible. Speaking of logistically difficult, there are a lot of logistical difficulties in planning and travel and getting to the other person, even if you're just driving distance. But for me in particular, something that's been really hard is planning work schedule around travel, booking flights, figuring out a rental car, figuring out if you have a pet, that's another big difficulty, paying a dog sitter to come and stay with your pet, etc., etc. It's just a big sacrifice, both financially and in terms of planning, to go and see the other person. I can imagine it being a lot more difficult if you have an in-person job with an employer and you only get 2-3 weeks of paid time off every single year and you have to do weekends and holidays. So I'm really thankful for that, but there is a really big logistical burden and a lot of effort just to see each other. This is something that yet again, a lot of you had said, and I didn't really even think about, but definitely does linger in the back of my mind. And it's the concept of wondering what life will actually be like when long distance is over. Because it is a big commitment to end long distance, but it's also a big unknown because you've only ever known your relationship in one context. It feels kind of difficult to undo if, worst case scenario, your relationship isn't as great after long distance as you had hoped. So that sounds very doom and gloom. I don't mean to say that to be doom and gloom. It's something, like I said, I didn't even think about till y'all inputted that in my Instagram box. But I was like, yeah, you know, that does like linger for sure. It's something you have to consider before changing your life for a person or letting else someone change their life for you. I would say the number one recurring worst part of long distance that y'all said is when you have a hard day, having to go through it on your own to some extent, not being able to just go be with your person, not being able to go just get a hug from them when the day was really hard. I can relate to that hugely because I'm a person that doesn't necessarily like to talk about my feelings. Like, I know my whole job on YouTube is literally just talking about my feelings, but that's actually very difficult for me in order to process and to feel better. I can only really do it after the fact. And for me, what I really need is, yet again, a physical touch. And so you really just have to learn to be super self-sufficient when it comes to getting through hard days, because it's not an option to just go to your partner's house and get a hug from them. You know, you have to find other community, other coping mechanisms, or you have to learn how to be okay talking it out over the phone in order to feel some sort of comfort, which is easier said than done. Avoiding conflict, because you only get a few days together and you don't want to spoil it, you just want to enjoy it. But sometimes in a healthy relationship, having a hard conversation is incredibly important. If there's something that's bothering you or you want to talk through or work through as a couple, you're gonna have to bring it up, and it might be difficult and it might not be necessarily a fun day, but it's incredibly essential to having a healthy communicative relationship. I totally get, because I'm the same way too, being like, we only have this weekend together. I don't want to bring this up now. I just want it to be fun and light and enjoyable. And that is hard. That's enough of the worst parts. I hate being a Debbie Downer, but hopefully if you're feeling just like kind of stuck in any of those things, you could feel less alone. There was a million things that y'all submitted, and the fact of the matter is, it's not easy. It is hard. There's a lot of sacrifices involved. But like I said, it's like going to the gym. I hate going to the gym. I think it's so hard, but you know what? A lot of benefits come from it. I get a lot stronger than if I didn't. I build muscles that I didn't know I had. There's a lot of benefits through going through something that is difficult, especially when there's an end goal in mind. Let's focus on those. The first best of the best thing is pretty self-explanatory. The excitement of finally getting to see each other, especially after like a month or more apart. Oh, it's so sweet being on the plane or being in transit to finally see the other person and just being like, 1 more hour, 30 more minutes. So exciting. And it really is sweet. And that's something that I know I'm going to look back on in this phase of life and just like kind of miss it, because it's a very special, unique experience. I feel like I should give a little backstory. For me personally, I was not trying to date. I was genuinely not expecting to meet someone to date. I was previously married. I was like half a year out of divorce. I needed some time for myself to like really learn independence, really kind of like refine myself. I didn't want to fall straight back into a relationship pattern. And I also feel like for me, if I quickly jump into a new relationship, I can accidentally fall into a lot of the same habits that might not have been healthy, because it's just like kind of still in your system. So I was not trying to date. So I'm really thankful that the person that God put into my lap was someone that I was forced to date long distance, because for me, some of the benefits are you maintain independence, you maintain your own space, your own friends, your own life. You have so much time for hobbies, girls' nights, all the things, because you don't have the option of filling your nights with the other person. So if you want to do something, you have to really do things on your own, make your own plans, hang out with your own friends, find new skills, new hobbies, etc. And that's what I really needed in that phase of life. Go through therapy, do all those things before jumping so full-fledged into a relationship in person. Another perk, I just got back literally last night from 10 days of visiting him in his hometown, and I took off work, and it truly feels like such a vacation getting to see them, because you're leaving home and you only get a certain amount of time together. So you go and you experience their restaurants and their sites and their town and all those sorts of things, and it feels like quite an experience. I find, at least my personality, when I live in a city, I start to take it for granted and I don't go out and do as much and explore as much, which is why I love travel. And getting to visit your person and their city is like having the best tour guide ever. It really feels like such a fun trip, such a fun vacation. This was something that Jordy contributed to this list. He said, that being in a long distance relationship allows you to process the relationship in like pieces and in chunks instead of being so swept up into a relationship to where you don't have like the time and space to take a step back and process what had just happened or what you had just been to. I do think it's a lot easier to get swept up into a relationship when like every single day is a routine and the same. It is kind of nice to have the forced space to really like think about and process, is this for sure still what I want? Does this feel healthy? Does this feel right? Do I miss the person? Etc., etc. You have to be so intentional. You have to really want to date the other person because it does take so much effort to see them again. It can't just be like a casual thing. It can't be like, well, this person lives in my apartment building and I'm bored tonight, I'm a little lonely and I'm not quite sure how I feel about them, but I'm gonna ask them if they wanna come over for drinks or whatever. You can't do that. You have to be so like, I want to see this person enough to book a flight, book a dog sitter, pack a suitcase, take time off work, like do all these things. You have to just really be so intentional about it. You get into the habit of really valuing each other's time. Yet again, you don't want to waste time. So you plan date nights. You have a month to think about. We have 3 nights together. How are we going to spend this? And it is really nice to like value each other's time, even if it's just scheduling a phone call. Like you respect each other's time a lot, which I really like. This one's pretty obvious. When you're apart, all you can really do is talk, whether that's on the phone, on FaceTime, over text, whatever. So you develop incredible communication skills because it is literally all you have when you're apart. And you also have to really like that person's personality. I think really does set you up for a good shot of longevity and of like genuine friendship within your relationship, which is my first time experiencing something like that. And it feels very cool, very healthy. Like I mentioned earlier with like acts of service and stuff, this does really encourage you to find incredibly creative ways to be intentional. Thankfully, like I mentioned, with technology, there's a lot of things you can do. You can Postmate someone your favorite meal, or you could schedule a car wash to come to their house, or there's a lot more creative things that you can do, send a package, whatever, and it means a lot to the other person. And it's kind of fun to like be like, okay, I can't do this myself because I'm not there in person, so what's something really creative? One example is something Jordy did for me once, which was so sweet, is he like planned out a solo date for me. He had a reservation at a sushi restaurant. He Venmo'd me to go get ice cream at a spot next door afterward, and he sent me all these voice memos to listen to at different parts of the date so that it felt like he was there with me. And I had never heard anybody do anything like that before, and it was just so intentional and such a sweet memory. And I got to get out and get my favorite food, sushi and ice cream, and just have a fun night exploring my city by myself, but not feeling lonely as well. And it was just really sweet. Last but not least, this is something that y'all said on Instagram because I have not experienced this yet, but I figured it's a really good note to end on. A lot of people said that after long distance, the trust is unbeatable because long distance takes so much trust in the other person. So you really kind of like put that to the test. And then once it finally comes to an end, you're like, wow, I have trusted you with so much. And now here we are. Living together in the same state, city, whatever it might be. And I think that that sounds really sweet. So thank you for sharing that with me because I love to know that that might be what is on the other side. Thank you, as always, for contributing your thoughts over on my Instagram. I like to come to y'all a lot for just kind of like crowdsourcing information because I do think it helps us get different perspectives from different points in a relationship and just so much wisdom from you guys. So thank you. If you ever want to contribute on my Instagram, here is my handle. I would love to hang out with you guys over there as well. And if there's anything I missed, because I know there's so much goodness that y'all told me over there, feel free to comment it down below. Something I love to do with these more like sit down chatty videos is create a little bit of like a group resource in the comments so that people can discuss and read through other people's perspectives and opinions. And so I'd love to know your thoughts, your experiences in the comments down below, but I love y'all. Thanks for spending the day with me, and I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye. So let's take all night, all night, all night, all night.